Ladies and gentlemen, before we move on to the next session, which is a fireside chat, we would request our Chief Executive to present a memento to the dignitaries on the dais, please. Ladies and gentlemen, this sapling is a symbol of green initiative towards climate finance. Thank you very much, sirs. May I request you all to kindly take your seats down. We'll have 2 chairs here. For a photo, yeah, please. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, it is now time for a fireside chat with Sri Ramann, Chairman and MD, SIDBI. Sri Ramann belongs to 1991 batch of Indian Audit and Account Service. Before joining SIDBI, he was MD and CEO of National E-Governance Services Limited. He has held various positions in the offices under the Comptroller and Auditor General of India in various states and also worked as Executive Secretary to the C&AG of India. He worked as First Secretary at Indian High Commission, London, for auditing the accounts of various Indian embassies in Europe. This fireside chat will be hosted by Shri Ashish Garg, MD and Senior Partner, BCG. Over to you, Ashish.
Thank you so much. Good morning, everyone. Thanks, Mr. Ramann, for joining this fireside chat. Let me warn you, I intend to get quite, I'll start in a very nice manner, but I'm going to get very sharp and very tough with you as we move forward. Is that all right? So, no nation in the world has become developed without MSMEs. You can look around the world, every nation to become Viksit or developed needs MSMEs. We have heard a lot about climate finance and we have spoken about the gap. We have also spoken about technologies evolving, large industries coming in. Can you just paint a picture of how this landscape on climate finance is looking with context to MSMEs?
Thank you, Ashish, and thank you to the IBA and to the DFS. I think every such workshop or seminar is vital, and I think we're all adding that much more, knowledge and practical aspects of how we are taking forward the, challenge that climate finance risk has brought in. And thank you so much for taking me straight into the MSME context, because that's really what we have been doing. So, I think at a very broad level, I'd like to say that we don't want the MSME sector in India to be sort of jolted out of its, growth phase when suddenly we have some sort of an imposition of international standards. So I think, right through, if you go back into history, there has been a need for the developed countries which have already transitioned and sort of come to a level of emissions, having, of course, as the panelists just said, having created that polluted stock, but now they have transited. But the point is, it's easy for them to impose certain standards on a developing country like India. And I think it's really for us to take that call of how to grow responsibly. So we have to grow, albeit responsibly. So the MSME sector is actually struggling to grow. And I'm not looking at the really micro segment, which may be at a sustainability or a survival stage. But even if we were to look at the very robust sector of small and medium units, all told, they may be, we're talking about not more than 1 lakh units, in that particular sub-segment. The total MSME sector, therefore, is dominated by the micro. Now, what we need to get these people to understand, and this, the biggest knowledge that came to us is over 7 to 8 years, we have run a risk-sharing facility with the help of the World Bank. This has targeted the MSME just to get them to move to energy-efficient methods of production. It has been a remarkable success from the point of view that 37 million has been put out as a corpus for risk sharing. We have not had a single NPA in over 80 projects. Over 700 crores has been supported through this risk sharing facility. All, I mean, about 13 to 14 banks are part of this. The World Bank was so happy with the results that they have now taken this to every single developing country, saying that we have the ability now to support the transition to energy efficiency. And what does energy efficiency mean? From an MSME perspective, it's really about, am I willing to go ahead and invest in something which is expensive, knowing that my neighbor is not doing it, but I'm going to get the benefit. Now, this realization is coming from the fact that all of them are part of a larger value chain. That value chain, luckily, has started talking ESG. It has started talking about climate risk. So, if you look at it from the anchor company or the large companies, they are saying that the scope 3 is something that they want to get into, and therefore they're looking at where is their supply coming from. And they are imposing certain conditions. Now, this is a far better way of going about it than an international imposition of standards. So, I would really say that as SIDBI, and I'm saying this for all the banks sitting here, that the amount of money that is flowing into the small and medium sector is large. A lot of banks are already onto this concept of climate risk acting as a go, no-go criteria. So if a company does not meet an ESG standard, or let me say an ENS standard, let's leave the G out of it for the moment, they probably will not lend. Now that is giving the right signal, saying that we want something from you which is looking green. So I think that's really the perspective from which we have gone into doing a variety of activities within the MSME sector.
Excellent. And look, energy efficiency seems like just the right starting point. It's a win-win for every stakeholder. But give us a flavor. I mean, apart from energy efficiency, on the ENS side, are you seeing any particular demand which is kind of now starting to appear? Are you starting to see any pockets which are emerging? Because scale becomes important for us to address. Is there any experience you can share with the audience?
So I think there are plenty. So I think, starting from CBG, going to EV, and as Mr. Tiwari, Mr. Rashmi, all have brought out some excellent points in the morning. We are looking at solar rooftop. I mean, I think the need for moving into energy efficiency and into a much larger, aspect of can I become more green has now come into the psyche of most of the medium and small. Now, the banking system and frankly, the NBFC plus the banks have already started supporting this. What we found, again, taking from the experience of CGT MSE, which is India's largest credit guarantee fund for the micro and small, given the energy efficiency risk sharing facility, which is just a credit guarantee scheme, we have now gone into 3 different types of credit guarantee schemes. And I'm emphasizing this because I think it's probably the most efficient, effective way of making a quantum jump, making that shift to a new way of doing business. So the moment we tell the banking sector that you are covered 75% or 60% for all your investments, all your loans into what is green assets, there is immediately an interest of the bank to go and take that risk. And I think it is really about all of us together taking that risk and moving into financing of new sets of assets. And therefore, I have seen the solar rooftop take off very well. In fact, we are not the size of SBI, but SIDBI itself has got today a little more than $500 million of assets just on solar rooftop. Now, if we're looking at this, and this is covered right now through the CGT MSc, but we've got a program now coming up with the World Bank. There's a large amount, it can go up to $1 billion, where the World Bank is willing to come with a credit guarantee support for solar rooftop. So our campaign is really every MSME with a solar rooftop on their premises.
Brilliant. Actually, you know, charity begins at home. So I'm glad you are already speaking about some numbers. But for a country of India's size, 500 million, 4,000, 1 billion is actually nothing. So tell us what ambitious targets you have kept for SIDBI in terms of green financing for the next few years. How are you thinking about building this portfolio? Because what happens is, as pilots, we can do many things. But it's really when the scale-up happens, then we start to see the benefit for everyone.
No, I mean, I think we have to be very clear that, SIDBI as a balance sheet is, is what it is. It's a mid-sized bank at best, but we are largely a refinance organization. We are moving entirely into now digital loans, and we're therefore offering all our loans are entirely digital. But the fact remains that our role is really much more than that of a direct finance bank. We are a development financial institution, and therefore we're taking that part of the duty very seriously, where we're looking at creating the facilities for all other lenders to come in. So as much as we will ensure that we are nearly going to become a green bank, and that's really our, so let me just exemplify it by the fact that KFW recently gave us 125 million line, but we've already produced more than 3 times the assets to sort of offer for that line. Now, obviously, we're talking about critical aspects of cost of finance. Even today, the KFW line is just about 30 basis points lower than what we could raise in the domestic market. Now, this point has been belabored in the morning, and I think we probably need to make it a sharper point that if the international community is not bringing in global funds at costs which are substantially lower, then this fight against climate risk is going to take that much longer. But having said that, I honestly believe that the the domestic economy has enough funds. So can we do a little more innovative action to bring in more domestic funds? And again, I'm really talking about how we have blended certain, grants, certain, other, technical assistance grants, blended it into our own money, and then we're offering probably the most competitive rates for, green assets today. I think there is a lot of scope for blending both from philanthropic money as well as global money. And I think that's probably the way we need to move forward. And I'm saying even a 50 basis points reduction is something which people will grab. And we've seen that happen. So I honestly believe that, the credit guarantee schemes for solar rooftop, and let me sort of quickly mention, and this is more recent, so we have now created a very large program for electric vehicles. This is again, it so happens to be a World Bank, covered guarantee scheme. We are now looking at 125 million that they are coming in with. But the EV challenge, and I'm now moving really from, a defensive strategy to a more aggressive strategy, that there is money to be made for all of us in the EV space. So we're talking about 2030 targets, or which is called 30-30, 30 at 30. Now we're saying that there are 30 crore vehicles today. Even if I were to take that number today and say what is the 30% target, we're saying 9 crores. Now 90 million vehicles should be EV today, we are at 5 million. There is a huge opportunity in the country for all of us, from the manufacturers to the distributors to the battery manufacturers to the financiers, saying how are we going to meet that enormous gap which this country needs. And it's happening, but I don't think it can happen at rates which today the NBFCs, of course, have taken the lead, but the rates of interest are just too high. So we need to move into bank finance, we need to move into credit guarantee schemes for EV, so that money can flow. And we have aggregator models which have come in. We've got some excellent platforms where battery information is available every 5 minutes to the aggregator platform. You know the health of your vehicle, you can switch off the vehicle if the guy doesn't pay your money. So, you know, the infusion of technology into finance and looking at it from a banker's point of view, the risk levels have come down drastically because you have that much more data. So, you know, if you again look at it, finance with the data backing you is really what we're all looking for.
There's so many wonderful points you have given in my previous answer. I want to actually pick up so many threads from what you said. But I'm going to go back to my initial questions one second and see if there is an answer I can kind of get from you. We understand you are into indirect finance, and therefore the multiplication that you have is enormous. But let's say 5 years down the road, SIDBI of today versus 5 years, what part of SIDBI's balance sheet would have supported or directly, indirectly green finance? That would be one question. And I think you gave a lot of portfolio ideas, EVs, solar rooftops, energy efficiency. Is there anything new that you have discovered, anything which is kind of really capturing your imagination and you want to understand that piece very well? Some smart, interesting entrepreneur has come to you or a group?
Yeah, I think, you know, what I've seen of late is really the flow of brilliant ideas from a commercial perspective, from something that's backed by the VC and the PE industry. So the number of you know, initiatives that have come about where commercial capital is chasing great ideas. So I would even say things like battery manufacturing in the EV space. It is huge. We're talking about two-wheeler and three-wheeler largely because that's really what we are pushing. But we're also doing a program with the MHI, the Ministry of Heavy Industries, for buses. Now, we are talking about an altogether different manufacturing process of batteries for buses. Now, we can actually put in a lot more money, and that money is chasing good technology, and we're looking at, you know, lithium batteries moving to sodium batteries. So I would really say that the most exciting part of this entire, you know, sort of challenge that we have for climate risk is really how we can attract commercial capital to come into India and look at the huge demand that exists, but that demand is being met by technology, by better material science, by, of course, the technology and the software that surrounds the battery. So, you know, I may have escaped your direct question, but my only point is that the big ideas are really about how we are, you know, infusing tech into material science. Let me also mention, again in the same genre, that the compressed biogas space is huge. So there's another very large project that's happening with the Ministry of Petroleum, where we are looking at, again, through a much larger risk-sharing facility or a credit guarantee facility, to bring banks into financing those many more CBG projects. It is a huge area. One of the most interesting discussions I had of late is a gentleman from the power industry is looking at growing grass. It's a particular type of grass which lends itself to getting into conversion into gas. It is fast growing and it converts very easily. We're talking about decentralized power generation. We're talking about decentralized gas availability. So, you know, CBG has a huge power to go across the country in smaller chunks, much like what we're doing for not the solar rooftop, but what a few power companies have come forward with is, you know, installations of 20 megawatts, which can feed an entire MSME cluster. Now, that's something which is very exciting because you're saying it's dedicated power to that particular set of consumers. So you have a market that's ready for you. So I think these are really the more innovative ideas that we're looking at.
Lovely. I'm sure this is music to, in G20 Global Biofuel Alliance was announced, so I'm sure this is just wonderful. You know, again, there are again so many elements. Tell us something a little bit about the ventures. You know, SIDBI has been actually pretty profound in their whole accelerator funds. In the past, you have also been able to make a lot of money on the MFI investments that you did, which then turned out to be small finance banks. So is there an active thought process in addition to just being the lender or coming from the lending perspective, also to increase your presence on the venture side?
So, Ashish, I would really again say that we never went into any of this with a commercial motive. Not that I have anything against a commercial motive. I think it's absolutely essential for all of us to build a good balance sheet so that more money can go into the areas that you want to get into. But, like the MFI journey, I think we are looking at a huge green finance journey. And there are, as I said, many areas in which our money should be going into. So the biggest lesson I think we learned was the 10,000 crores fund of funds for startups. We have created 110 AIFs which have put money into more than 1,000 startups. But the catalytic effect was really that out of the 10,000 we've committed 9,000 crores, but those AIFs have themselves generated another 56,000 crores from both the global and the Indian economy. So, you're talking about the ability to garner money to put them into the areas that you want. So, on the heels of that, what we're really doing is trying to create a green fund of funds. So, we are committing from our own balance sheet, and we're looking at other, sort of like-minded international entities or institutional entities in India. And we're saying that we have to go in for at least a $500 million fund which will promote another bunch of AIFs which can then take forward several strategies, several portfolio companies that might be innovative. And we're looking at a much wider range. We're not just saying it could be even food grown in labs. Now that is part of a larger sustainability concept. So, there are many areas in which we are probably not seeing enough money, and therefore we'd love to be that catalytic agent to make that money come in.
I can't help but see, Anjali, you just walk in when this conversation is going on. So here you have a partnership I can almost foresee. We have a few minutes, so I'm going to move to maybe one or two further points and bring you to the close. So look, as bankers, we obviously want to help the industry be a part of their progress, but we are also very sensitive to NPAs. Now this is a new area. What you have said is, few 100 crore rupees, it's okay, we can deal with it. But as it scales up, and we have seen not very far down the memory lane, we can get very, very paralyzed in some ways or very cautious when things don't go well. You spoke about data, you spoke about how we can provide more information. Is that all that we need from a risk management perspective? I know you have been introducing a bunch of things from your vantage for the MSMEs, but tell us a little bit about how can you play the developmental role in climate finance for risk management?
So Ashish, I think that's a very real topic, and not that the others were not real, but this is really hitting at the heart of, how is it that the bank looks at the risk, and more importantly, how are banks, especially in the public sector space, looking at securing a sort of shield for their officers, for their initiatives which are going into what today is still the more risky areas. So I think your point is bang on. We really need to be able to, take that leap of faith for all the public sector banks by creating some kind of better accountability policies, so that if we're talking about going into more risky areas, then you don't have a negative fallout that hits individual officers. So I think that is really an important point. But having said that, what I would really sort of stress upon more is, another area in which SIDBI is working very closely with the power sector. And I think a lot, again in the morning, the takeaway was really that a lot of the focus of climate risk is really coming from the power sector. Because at the end of it, even if we are charging an EV with power that comes from a thermal station, then we're probably not really that green as we thought we were going to be. But what we're really doing is we have now got a list of about 900 machineries, which are again a very wide range of machineries, largely within the medium and small sector space, but it could be used by anybody. And we have now validated these machineries through an actual calculator, which is bringing out the savings of GHG or CO2. And we are running our own investments, our own loans are going through this calculator. We are testing it, we've got the validation from BE. Now we're saying that we will offer this to the entire industry so that anybody who's giving a loan tomorrow can probably calibrate that loan on that calculator saying that yes, it's a 5% energy saving or it's a 25% energy saving. And we are therefore moving in this manner to a more practical aspect of what are green assets. So we still don't have a taxonomy in place. I'm sure it's going to come out fairly soon. But what's more important from a practical sense is that at least I have a set of assets where I know the buckets that those assets fall in. So what shade of green, as Mr. Mehta said in the morning, is really not that important, but we should be looking at the green asset. So that's another way that we'll probably, through a simple API connectivity for the banking industry, to be able to come and hit that calculator and then understand where they are on the loans.
I think the human aspect needs to be really taken care of for us to really achieve scale. One of the learnings I have since morning is I think there is already a lot of information, but probably in pockets. Just this conversation has revealed so much. Maybe there is a way to put all of this information, what bankers have been trying, what kind of conversations are happening. I think it will really be very helpful. Tell us, SIDBI is a very proud organization, is an organization which has been built over decades. Some of this is very new. How are you building capabilities in the organization? What are the challenges? And I'm sure that will be, I'm asking this question on behalf of also a lot of bankers. How do you kind of get into some of these new areas? It requires a lot of new muscles.
Again, I am completely humbled to say that we have learned only from others. So, the entire learning is really by going into what we have in the IBA as an IBA, ESG committee. We've also reached out to international partners. So we have both the AFD and the World Bank, which have worked very closely with us. In fact, the AFD is even tied up with the IBA as a knowledge partner of some sorts. So I think, we really have to pick up a lot of learnings that are already available internationally. We have created a dedicated climate team within SIDBI. I'm sure a lot of other banks have also done that. And our need to bring in domain experts is again very strong. So our team is actually probably half SIDBI bankers and the other half is a set of domain experts. So I think that's really where we end up helping a lot of other people. We help a lot of NGOs to the NBFCs to sort out how they are going to go forward. So, there's a lot of hand-holding that we are doing with the, sort of mix of skills that we've got. And I think that's really the only way to go forward. We recently got into, a steel decarbonization fund. Now, this decarbonization fund of the steel sector is not something that we understand. But we certainly have brought in the right people to be able to carve out the, operating role that we have to play in that.
Fantastic. And maybe you can then push this also to MSMEs. Maybe you can create a SIDBI Mahavidyalaya for, who knows, green, understanding of green and green financing, a bunch of things. My final question to you, let's say a few years down the road, you are here as, in some capacity and a conversation on green financing is happening on MSMEs. What will make you proud?
Good question, a tough one, but I would really say that from a pure banking perspective, if we can create that milestone journey for the banking sector, saying what is the share of your assets that are truly green. And I think that's a easy, realistic and very quantifiable way of marking that journey. So it really is about target setting. I mean, at the end of it, the entire set of branches that we all have got, if we are putting targets on them and monitoring it, I'm sure we'll be able to achieve the targets that have been set for us, because the 2030 target on EV is looking enormously large. The 2045 target again is something that is still so far away. I don't know how much work we're really doing towards it. So I think breaking down those targets into measurable, achievable annual targets is really what we all have to get down to. And sorry for sounding very sort of
it's
boring
fantastic.
And practical, but that's the only way.
What gets measured gets done. So I'm very confident that the banking sector will really support the entire country and MSMEs in particular on their green finance journeys. Thank you very much. Pleasure talking to you, Mr. Ramann.
Thank you, Ashish.
Thank you very much. Please stay back for a photo. Thank you, sirs. It was quite an interesting discussion. And Ashish, may I request you to stay back for a moment? Chandrasekhar, sir, can you please present a memento to Ashish as a token of love and affection? Thank you.